we're going to move on for now.
Trump is back.
Eastern Ohio, where people from the town of East Palestine had the opportunity to confront the CEO of Norfolk Southern over the company's handling of the train derailment in that town.
Oh, fuck.
Former President Donald Trump also spent time in the area yesterday and took the opportunity to criticize President Biden, who has been overseas, of course, criticizing Biden for not visiting the community. Roxana Saberi has been there for days now. She's in nearby Youngstown, Ohio. Roxana, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Residents around here say they're still not getting the full story from officials and Norfolk Southern. Most of all, they're afraid the place they've called home might never be the same again.
My sister was right next to the tracks with her fiance. She could have been killed.
Angry East Palestine citizens got the chance to speak publicly to Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw for the first time yesterday since the toxic train derailment, and they made their feelings clear.
Did you shorten my life now? I want to retire and enjoy it. How are we going to enjoy it? You burned me. We were going to sell our house. Our value went poof.
We're going to get the cleanup right. We're going to reimburse the citizens. We're going to invest in the long-term health of this community.
Despite repeated EPA assurances that the city's water wells are unaffected and the air is safe, residents are still wary of heavily polluted soil and creeks, like this one CBS News filmed just yesterday. Earlier in the day, former President Trump toured the site of the February 3rd derailment.
I like that one, but this one's even nicer.
Situated in deep red Columbiana County, which Trump took with more than 70% of the vote in 2020, East Palestine greeted him warmly. Former president wasted no time blasting the current president for not coming to East Palestine sooner.
I sincerely hope that when your representatives and all of the politicians get here, including Biden, they get back from touring Ukraine, that he's got some money left over.
Though Trump has received criticism from Democrats for rolling back regulations in the rail industry during his presidency, many here.
I don't know why people like Alan Fisher and the like and other people are talking about how like the derailment wasn't caused by brakes. It was caused by something else. When like the rolling back of brakes is in the same vein as all matter of different deregulation efforts / a lack of adequate support for infrastructure spending. So who gives a fuck? Like I know Trump isn't directly responsible with the rollback that he engaged in, but it still doesn't matter. It's like these motherfuckers don't give a shit. They want to derail it. They want to derail it. Sorry, they want to deregulate anyway. Anyway, speaking of which, Alan Fisher also covered the story. We're gonna look at that. Let's watch the town hall first. I know Alan Fisher made a video about it.
Is also here and has a question for you.
Hi, I have a two-part question. So the first part of my question is if you could walk us through that decision of not digging up the soil and just rebuilding the train tracks over it. And second, it's been roughly 3 weeks. What new safety measures do you have in place since then, regardless of the investigation that's going on? Clearly, there are some things that need to change. And if you haven't come up with them yet, when can we expect to hear from them? Because this isn't the first. This won't be the last. People need to see change in a big way. And yeah, those are my questions.
Yes, ma'am. We believe that we had an environmentally sound remediation plan for the soil under the tracks. However, as I noted, as I continue to engage with members of East Palestine in one-on-one meetings and small group meetings.
Can I interrupt you? What made you believe that that was an okay resolution? That's what I'm looking for. Like what goes into that decision?
Yes. Our independent environmental experts. So,
So
as,
when you
as we
dump
have, as I have
100,000
engagement.
gallons of, when you dump 100,000 gallons of chemicals and
Oil.
And oil.
You're not talking about the oil.
60,000 gallons of oil. When you dump that into the ground and you don't take that out of the ground before you put your tracks on and you run your train on it,
You need to hire some new.
that's an okay
experts.
decision. The oil,
Ma'am,
the oil is going to cause us the long-term effects. Everybody's talking about the chemicals, and while I do think that's important, it's the oil that's seeping into our ground that you chose not to dig up and just put your tracks right over top of it. She's asking you specifically.
Dude, this is pretty sick. Oh, it's like you always say about the power white women have. Yeah. No, this is pretty fucking fire. Like, having a CEO wearing his fucking Patagonia fit, like this is his casual fit, you know what I mean? Have to sit there and listen to like some of the victims. Goddamn, it's cool. I love that, dude. You don't see that every day. I'm a fan of what's going on in front of me right now. I mean, it should be way more than that. Like, jail could be fun. You know what I mean? Like, that could be cool. Like, legal repercussions. I like stuff like that. Big fan of legal repercussions. But, you know, it's not going to happen. So this is what we got in the process. This is what we got instead. And I'm on board with it. I like it.
The ground before you put your tracks on and you run your train on it.
You need to hire some new.
That's an okay
experts.
decision. The oil.
Ma'am.
The oil is going to cause us the long-term effects. Everybody's talking about the chemicals, and while I do think that's important, it's the oil that's seeping into our ground that you chose not to dig up and just put your tracks right over top of it. She's asking you specifically, what led you to that decision?
Ma'am, we've made a lot of progress.
He has a "Are you done?" ass face right now too, like the "Are you done now? Are you done?" Okay, let me tell you what happened.
We've dug up 4,600 cubic yards of soil and collected 1.7 million gallons of water. We will continue with environmental remediation, and in early March we will start by tearing up the tracks and digging up the soil underneath the tracks.
I wonder why he's not there in person. You're right, Megaphonics. It's a good question. It'd be nice if he was there in person. It'd be even better.
6 weeks, oil's going to be soaking into our soil.
So until.
By the way, this is like the least sociopathic CEO. Okay, this is a CEO trying to, you know, to defeat the lizard allegations right now. This is him trying. He cranked up his like sympathy dial and maxed out on it, and this is all you're gonna get. Like why do I have to talk to you fucking peasants? I hate that I have to do this. Oh my God. Like, we fucking poison towns that are larger than East Palestine and forget about it. I've forgotten more fucking rural towns that I've poisoned than I have to think about. And you're over here fucking questioning me? How dare you question my authority? You don't understand how fucking difficult business is, okay? You don't know what it's like when you have to take $7 billion, $7.5 billion and repurpose them for stock buybacks. You don't know what that's like, okay? You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes.
Well, then we'll just have it keep going down.
Keep going in our soils.
Jenna, did you get all your questions answered?
No, I did specifically ask what changes you've already made, and I think these residents also are very valid in asking, like, why the delay? Why can't we do it tomorrow?
Yeah, Janice, thank you for that. I didn't get it.
It's
I
Jenna.
didn't get to
Just
respond to that.
It's Jenna.
Yeah, we're gonna. My apologies.
Bro, we should let CEOs do this kind of PR shit more often, dude. They're fucking. The more Americans understand what soulless husks these motherfuckers are, the better. Oh man, I love this. Oh, this is so good. Ooh, it's so fucking good.
We're gonna test and we're gonna calibrate all of the wayside detectors all across our system. That's something that we stood up in the immediate aftermath of this.
And is that something that's visible for people to see? Is it publicly available for us to see that that's being done?
It's an internal component to Norfolk Southern.
Don't you think people would
gonna
want to
do
see
it.
that happening? Wouldn't that show that you're trying to do something different if you're actively showing people this?
Yeah, the problem is he doesn't give a shit. He don't give a shit. He's the CEO of Norfolk Southern. Man's code switching with his wardrobe. He still looks like an out-of-touch CEO. Black fleece vest. Need I say more? Yes, this is his casual look. Don't you love that? Like, this is every part of this is like predetermined and manicured. Okay, and this is the best he's got. Yeah, he's looking like a Kelly Loeffler campaign ad. Exactly, and he's still not doing it. He can't.
We can certainly take videos of that and post it.
It
What
didn't
we
cross
have
your
done
mind
is
that
we
would be a
stood up a
positive
website. What we have done, based on feedback that we've gotten from the citizens, is we stood up a website, nsmakingitright.com, and we're providing updates every day on the environmental remediation. We're providing updates every day on the financial assistance for the community.
Mr. Shaw, one of the questions that Jenna asked that you didn't answer had to do with the fact that obviously whatever Norfolk Southern was doing almost 3 weeks ago wasn't sufficient in terms of safety. And her question was basically, you don't need to wait for the federal government or Governor DeWine to tell you to improve things. For example, if it's true, as Senator J.D. Vance notes, having 2 staffers and a trainee on a 150-car train would not seem sufficient in the view of Republican Governor Vance. So her question is, Senator Vance, her question is, what are you asking your team to do now to change it before the government makes you change it? Because you are in charge of the company. You can.
Why the fuck would they change anything before the government makes them change it, dude? Come on now. That's the entire point. That's the entire point and purpose of the regulatory body. Because these motherfuckers never do anything out of the kindness of their hearts. If anything, this is actually, this kind of like, capitalism being like overall indecent is baked into the narrative, even a narrative that libertarians understand, right? Because libertarians, what do they always say? They're like, oh, you don't need a regulatory agency. What you need is a Yelp review system to basically like fucking yell at corporations and the free market will kick in. And it's like, that still comes with an understanding that like corporations are going to cut corners regardless. And the only thing, something needs to stop them from doing that. And it's never going to be their own personal willingness to not cut corners, right? It's the consumers that will stop them from cutting corners, which is laughable. It's silly. It's stupid. But even then, they still recognize that corporations are going to cut fucking corners. They're going to cut corners with whatever the fuck they can get away with. You know what I mean? So it still happens. It still happens even in the libertarian solution. They still operate with an understanding that corporations are going to push for deregulation. They're going to get away with whatever the fuck they can.
Make those changes. And yes, if you spend $1 billion on safety, that's great. Of course, your profits are in the multi-billion dollars every year.
Yeah, we're also advancing technology on our locomotives to inspect the tracks as our trains run over the tracks. We're looking for the results from the NTSB, the investigation, to find the root cause of this, which is one of the reasons that we're cooperating fully with the NTSB and the FRA. We'll learn from this. what we had in place didn't work here. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to make the investments to make Norfolk Southern safer.
I want to bring in Jim Stewart, who has a question for you, sir.
Yeah, a lot of this that I have to ask has been answered already. But I'm speaking on the aspect that the people of East Palestine, are just being treated like dummies. We're not dummies. We're smart people. Listen to these people, what they have found out about different things and everything else. I'm angry. I'm angry about this. I've lived in East Palestine for 65 years now. That's my home. My grandmother came from Germany. She lived in Palestine. My dad grew up there.
What?
My family's grown up there now. And it is disgusting that we're just lost it. I live in a house that's probably the closest of any of these, and it's a shame. And this is probably the next closest one. And our house is, it's been inspected, it's been this, it's been that. I'm afraid to put my dog out just to pee. I mean, he's only on this tall. So, I don't feel safe in this town now. You took it away from me. You took us away from us. You seem like a sincere man. I'm not calling you names. I'm not, but your company stinks. Because
I mean, his job is literally to stink up the place, for the record. Like, if there's one, I'm never an advocate for like a singular individual being held responsible for any kind of thing. But if you want to look for a person to blame, like, this guy pretty much is the guy. You know what I mean? Like, that's the guy for sure. Like, this wasn't like, things got out of hand and people, mid-level managers decided to take actions that, that were completely outside of the control of like, people in higher levels of power, in higher positions of power. Like, this is the guy who pretty much is telling the mid-level managers to do exactly the things he wants to do. You know what I mean?
they're not watching what's
How
going
is this
on.
lib shit? What? I didn't say
Workers don't
that.
pay attention nowadays. Supervisors make workers work. You got to do something about this. I lost a lot. I lost the value of my home. I'm only one block. I can throw a stone to that burner. And what do we do now? I come back from Chicago 4 days. I was in Chicago for 4 days. I came home the other day. I put the garage door up. We pulled in the garage.
Yes, chat. He's blaming workers. This is a 65-year-old man, okay? He's a 65-year-old man. He literally said, I'm not a dummy. You seem like a sincere guy. It doesn't matter, though. He doesn't deserve this happening to him, okay? He's a 65-year-old in Ohio. What the fuck do you think his worldview is? Calm the fuck down. You know what I mean? Stop getting annoyed at a victim, okay?
Got out of the car, put the garage door down. Soon
His entire worldview revolves around literally fucking looking up to guys like this, you know, thinking that the CEOs are sincere and thinking that the workers probably fucked it up, okay? That's his worldview. Examine why that worldview exists and develop a better understanding of the systems that educate people, that churn millions of people like that out. And also recognize that, you know, just because he has a different political perspective than you do doesn't change the reality that he's still a fucking victim. Yeah, a lot of the people, I don't know what East Palestine's like voting demographics look like. I don't know what they fucking voted for. But I mean, it's Ohio, so it's not shocking to me that it would be like deep red. So these people did technically vote for the very deregulation that they ended up, receiving the brunt, receiving the consequences of. But ultimately, even if they didn't fucking vote for the Republican Party, it doesn't matter. It's like people that vote for Democrats are getting poisoned. Does that make it? Does that make these people less victims? No. There's no you reap what you sow when we talk about. There is no you reap what you sow when we talk about these kinds of issues. We live in a bourgeois, we live in a capitalist organization of the economy. This is a bourgeois government. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, as I tell you all the fucking time, are still going to poison you, okay? They're still going to advocate for either slight deregulation or heavy deregulation, okay? And most of the time, these people are just powerless. Like, they're just playing the role of, they're just playing the role just as you are, okay? Going through the motions, you know, doing their civic duty, voting for one party over the other. Okay? You will not come across as understanding if you look at a 65-year-old man who is naturally fearful that, like, his house is fucked now. Okay? Like, by being like, well, you voted for it. You know what I mean? It's fucking bullshit. Use it as an opportunity, be sympathetic, and use it as an opportunity to explain to people, like, look, listen, you know, Democrats are bad too, but this is a consequence of deregulation, and that knows no boundaries. That knows no political ideology. That is a capitalist attitude. I hate that, like, oh, red states deserve it mentality. Ohio voted for Trump. Trump removed safety regulations on trains. Sounds like Ohio got exactly what it voted for, but that's none of my business. Shit like this kills me. Only half of Ohio voted for Trump, and no, even that half does not deserve to be poisoned because of the excessive greed of railroad companies. Exactly. In a lot of instances, that shit's racist as fuck too, especially when people talk about the South and how shitty it is. I mean, you know I talk about how fucking shitty the South is all the time, but, you know, I offer that perspective on every state. I think every American state has a lot of shit qualities to it, okay? You know this already. It's, you know. I don't do that whole, like, oh, please stop sending me that fucking Hasan underscore Piker thread, please. Just, you don't deserve a week off, but, like, just, goddamn, dude. Just shut the fuck up. Yeah, I got it. Oh, here, you want to know the soy-ass fucking Reddit meme that this guy keeps sending? Hold on, I'll show you. Hold on, here. You want to know? This is the fucking, just stop being so fucking soy and so Reddit for one day. Massive fucking coalition. Working class right, progressive left. Somehow you fucking keep spamming the same link, which is even cringier than fucking Megaphonics links. I don't give a fuck about the politics of individuals. Okay? I don't give a fuck about the politics of individuals. What is this? Bro, I know you got connections. Tell them to stop this now. Okay, shut the fuck up. I don't care about this right now. Okay? I always say this. When it comes to the liberation of the working class, it doesn't matter if someone is a fucking Democrat. It doesn't matter if someone is a Republican. Okay? When it comes to the emancipation of workers, there is no politics there other than class politics, okay? Unions are full of right-wing people. Why the fuck is that the case? It's like, who cares? It doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter. I literally sent a good link right before you said that. I fucking heavily doubt it. Let's take a look. Oh, yeah, you did the Ohio deserved it meme. Okay, that's the one good Megaphonics link for the day. The one good one. Here, there you go. I gave it to you. Unions are not about the Democratic Party. They're not about the Republican Party. Labor unions are about collective bargaining. Okay? It's about what is fair. It's not about left or right. It's about what is fair. Okay? That's why they're not the end-all be-all. It's not the fucking solution. It's just the first step. Eugene Debs said it best. Eugene V. Debs, still posting. The capitalists are combined against you. They are reducing wages. They have control of control of the courts. They are doing everything they can to destroy your power. You have got to follow their example. You have got to unify your forces. Left or right matters in politics, though. No, it doesn't. It doesn't in America. And it doesn't in like developed Western neoliberal capitalist countries. I'm talking about something entirely different. You can be a right-wing piece of shit, but you still deserve not to have your fucking home destroyed. You can be the biggest right-wing piece of shit. Okay? There are certain concepts that, in my opinion, transcend the left-right political divide. This is something I talk about regularly. Okay? Like the idea when we talk about healthcare for all, it's not healthcare for, only the Democratic Party voters, okay? It's healthcare for everybody. How many times do I got to explain this? Like I say this all the time. Nazis also deserve healthcare. Okay? Nazis also deserve public housing. If anything, if material problems are solved, it's going to be much harder for them to, become Nazis. That doesn't mean that, like, Nazis are becoming Nazis and fascists because of their conditions or whatever. But the goal overall is still to make it more difficult for people to want to become that way. Okay? Material restitution is actually how to change someone's mind, which is what materialism is. Yes. Fuck that. Nazis deserve to die. I know, man. I know. You're like an awesome LARPer. I know. But we're talking about something that's larger than that. Okay? Insane take. This pacifist stance screams, I live in a bubble. Okay. How do people miss the point so fucking hard? I don't understand, especially long-term community subs. I get it, dude. You're epic. You're based. Okay. You're epically based. You are the most based. You are the most like Nazi punching guy out here. Okay. I'm giving you the most extreme example so you can understand where I'm coming from. Okay. Every single person deserves access to health care, access to housing. And when they do not get that, that economic volatility is what fosters other pieces of shit to turn around and radicalize people in the wrong direction. If you can't comprehend that, what the fuck are you doing here? Okay? There's no understanding or common ground or uniting with Nazis. No, I'm not saying find common ground with the Nazis, man. What the fuck? This is entirely removed from how you personally deal with this shit, okay? That's not what we're talking about. That's not the point at all. Medicare for all is not Medicare for everybody that I agree with, okay? Medicare for all is Medicare for all. If you understand that everyone's fucking politics comes from their social conditioning, and if you understand that our social conditioning is a product of our material conditions, then you understand material restitution is what will eradicate big chunks of people who become white supremacists, fascists, okay? That's it. Chat is so uneducated. They aren't even listening to your points and getting mad at a straw man. I know. I don't think money has ever made someone less racist. That's not what I'm talking about. You're, again, misunderstanding what I'm stating here. Your material conditions are not just how much money is in your pocket. That is incredibly reductive. It's access to amenities, okay? And it's not like in other countries where they have better social safety nets. They don't, where, you know, they don't have Nazis or whatever. Of course they do. They have them in Germany, AFD, right? Education is a component. Workers' rights are another component. Not being fearful of where your next meal ticket is coming from. Having more autonomy in your workplace. That's where a lot of this stems from. Anyway, the reason why I mentioned Nazis is because this is an extreme example. And I did that deliberately. I did that on purpose. Because I don't care that you hate that I use the most extreme example. That's why I talk about rehabilitation all the time. And whenever I talk about rehabilitation, chat goes, what about murderers? And obviously, there are people who currently, at least with our medical knowledge, cannot be rehabilitated. But when people talk about murderers, I say, yes, even murderers can be rehabilitated. And the focus should always be on rehabilitation and reintegration into society in our criminal justice system. But you cannot escape your social conditioning. You cannot escape what you have learned from your parents, what you've learned from every fucking thing that you've consumed leading up to this moment. It's very hard to change course, okay? So listen to what I'm talking about. Listen to my words. It's those extremes that people often use as an example to justify the normal parts of denying people health care, or the other people who are imprisoned for minor offenses for the rest of their fucking lives, okay? Stop doing this reactionary politics bullshit, okay? When we talk about an attitude, an unflinching attitude and support towards lowering recidivism through rehabilitative means, we talk about every single person. There's no like, well, this guy individually deserves it. Fuck that guy. You can't say that. Medicare for all means for all. It means right-wing Republicans too. You're really going to sit here and say if someone killed your mom and brother, you should get some time off? Come on, man. Justice is not vengeance. The goal of a criminal justice system is supposed to be about lowering the recidivism rate and reintegrating every single person back into society. Okay? Please try to understand what I am saying. Yeah, man, I get that. Okay. Even if I have an individual weak moment where I personally believe, like, fuck this guy, you know, I'm going to be hyper personal and hyper specific. If someone murders my parents, I want to fucking kill them. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. That's not how systems work. Okay? That's not. That's why they don't put victims' families in the fucking jury. Even in our currently fundamentally flawed criminal justice system, we don't do that, right? Every single fucking time I bring this up, someone has to be like, what if someone killed your mom? It's like, I get it. Okay? But the reason why people feel this way, and so many people feel this way, especially so, is because they're American. And America is very draconian. Okay? Americans love operating off of the Hammurabi Code, an eye for an eye. Forgetting the second part of that, which is that an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Reactionary as fuck. And it's silly. I'm not in the business of no accountability, clearly. I want CEOs and the real villains of society, the wage stealers, CEOs, the regulators that don't actually do their fucking job, to be punished, to go to prison even. Okay? That does not mean that I don't think that they have the capacity. They have the capacity to change. My goal is not for them to suffer and feel bad. It might make me feel a little good to think about a bad person suffering and feeling bad. But my goal, and I hope you understand that as well, and that this should be your goal as well, is to make sure that they become better people. Okay? And there's nothing that shows that this attitude has failed, especially in America, than the way that our current criminal justice system works. I mean, you can extrapolate larger concepts by just looking at a simple difference between here in the United States of America, where we have the highest recidivism rate and the highest incarcerated population on the fucking planet, and I believe the highest prisoner per capita population as well, okay, in comparison to a place like Norway, where they at least have better rehabilitation measures. We house 25% of the entire world's prisoner population. Okay? The United States population overall is 4% of the entire world population. So think about that. Why is it that other places have better integration measures? Why is it that in other countries, people actually do horrible things, right? And then can actually still reintegrate into society? Your criminal justice system works when someone who has done a crime never does it again. Your criminal justice system does not work if someone does a crime and is mistreated, okay, in the prison population when they become a convict, okay? And when they get out, they have no job opportunities, so they return to crime again. That's a failure. An abject failure. Because they have less diversity and racism? That's not true. What the fuck? That's literally you're talking about like cultural hegemony, and that is an inherently right-wing argument, for the record. That's literally a Ben Shapiro talking point. That's a Nazi talking point as well. Nothing shows that it works. Lol, rehab, Andrew Tate. I get it. Yeah, no, totally. Do you believe it's possible to change America's minds on this within our lifetime? No, but it won't stop me from doing it. It won't stop me from trying. Anyway. I think decarceration is a complex subject because there are a lot of crimes that can be solved by generational healing and material conditions / policy by government. But then you see people who kick random innocent people on the street for no reason, and you question if solving the root cause of crime would have prevented them from doing that. I never said that that is the case, by the way. I always mention that there are currently, with our medical knowledge, incurable antisocial personality disorder related crimes. Okay? Motherfuckers will say, I'm being ableist or whatever, okay? But that's the reality. There are still going to always be psychos, sociopathic criminals, serial killers, okay? As it stands, we don't have a good way of, we don't have a good way of curing or treating it, okay? That's just the truth. But those are edge cases. Those are not like the norm. That's not the commonplace thing that's happening, right? The overwhelming majority of people that are doing any kind of crime, even violent ones, I would say, are doing it as a consequence of their material conditions. There are still people who will do it regardless, and that is the reason why we still need some mechanism that that prevents them, or at least creates a sense of law and order. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. Like, I'm not in favor of like full abolition of the police or anything like that. You know, I'm not saying that like prisons are completely obsolete. It's just that our understanding of the criminal justice system currently is a vindictive one. And the U.S. prison system treats everybody like Ted Bundy. Exactly. Anyway.
As soon as we got out of that car, the smell came back to us right away. Instant headache. You know, I'm 65 years old, a diabetic, AFib heart disease, everything. Now, did you shorten my life now? I want to retire and enjoy it. How are we going to enjoy it? You burned me. We were going to sell our house. Our value went poof. You know, do I mow the grass? Can I plant tomatoes next summer? What can I do? I'm afraid to. You know, and it's in the air. Every day I cough. A little cough here, a little cough there. I've never had that. You know, I got rashes on my cheeks and all my arms from the derailment. I don't call it a derailment. I call it a disaster. It's Norfolk's disaster, not a train derailment. I'm an honest. I shoot from the hip, just like the governor just told us. I tell you the truth. You seem like a family man, a great guy and all, but you know what? Like I said, your company has to do something.
How are you going to make it up to him, Mr. Shaw? How are you going to make it up to Jim Stewart and all the other families?
Jim, thank you for those comments. I hear you. I'm terribly sorry that this has happened to this community. What I can do and what I will do is make it right. We're going to get the cleanup right. We're going to reimburse the citizens. We're going to invest in the long-term health of this community. I'm going to see this through, and we're going to be here. And we're going to work with these community leaders to help it thrive. I think you heard the mayor talk about, making this community even better. That's what I'm picking up.
It's kind of shit right now.
The community leaders and citizens. We're looking for ideas from the community on where we can help and things that we can do.
Well, would you be willing to buy
That's why
their
we have
houses?
somebody.
Will you buy them out of their houses at the property value so Jim can retire? That's making it right? Step up.
We're going to. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I interrupted you.
You're good.
Jim wants to hear your answer.
We're going to do what's right for this community.
Well, that's
That's
what's
my
right.
commitment.
But did your derailment, did it change me now? It's made me an angry man. I'm a Christian. I love the Lord. But you've made me angry. And I don't want to be like that. I want you to respect me like I respect you right now. And like I said, I lost everything now. I worked hard. I'm still working. I'm my 44th year at my job. I wanted to get out. Now I'm just stuck.
Wait, that's it? Identical?
Hello, I'm Tony Hayward, President and CEO of BP. Our accidental drilling spill again in the Gulf is a tragedy that should have never happened. And to all those affected, I want to say, we are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. Sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. Sorry. We're sorry. I'm deeply sorry. Sorry.
I mean, yeah. Look at this fucking dipshit centrist.
First tweet.
Oh, by the way, Pete Buttigieg is now on the ground. I repeat, La Rata has entered the fold. He is now in East Palestine, Ohio. Looking like he's doing stuff. He's got the vest on. This is what it looks like when accountability journalism shames the cabinet secretary into having to show up and do his job. Which, by the way, big dub for Davis Sirota. Straight up. The lever definitely did a really good fucking job with this. They were up his fucking asshole the entire time. Oh, my Lord. Let's take a look. Pete Buttigieg says he should have tweeted about East Palestine derailment sooner. Oh, God. Oh, man.
Send your first tweet expressing concern for the residents of East Palestine a week and a half after the accident happened.
I do love seeing people demand answers in the same way that, like, I ask for answers. You know what I mean? I like that. Like, I love seeing it. I love people recognizing the situation.
In hindsight, was that waiting too long to express anything hours after you had addressed the makeup of work crews on highway construction projects just that very day?
The answer to your question is yes. I felt strongly about this and could have expressed that sooner. Again, I was taking pains to respect the role that I have and the role that I don't have, but that should not have stopped me from weighing in about how I felt about what was happening to this community.
Send your first tweet.
Statement contains just about every trope of the condescending midwit liberal centrist journals I've come to expect. Adam Wren is like basically doing PR for Buttigieg, by the way. Adam Wren is Pete Buttigieg's man inside of Politico. Those of you who don't know. He literally got a scoop before anyone else because he personally was talking about how David Sirota is a fucking asshole. When David Sirota was writing about, Pete Buttigieg's incompetence, okay? So just know that. Anyway, he's a big suck-up. It is exceedingly rare for a transportation secretary to visit the site of a train derailment, especially one that resulted in no fatalities. Even though this crash has resulted in unusually heavy national media attention, partly driven by the televised image of the accident's toxic black plume and residents' anger over the safety of their air and water. About 1,000 train derailments occur each year, according to federal data. I love that. Offers a bunch of quantitative data, no fatalities, 1,000 train derailments per year when the issue is just as much qualitative. Condescending actually tone, pretending to be public is mad about a secondary issue, televised images, and not the thing itself. Yeah. I mean, by the way, the funniest part about it is that is true. Like, everything they're saying is true. But, like, that just shows that the situation is even more fucked than you'd think. You understand? Like, your attitude shouldn't be, situation is actually way worse. Because, like, I acknowledge all that. If you send me the Buttigieg World sounds like the worst theme park ever one more time, I'm going to put you on the spaceship. That's what I was talking about when I said that's your shit that's your shit link of the day. Why? You were doing so well, Megaphonics. Why? Why? You literally posted the dub, and you were posting that L beforehand, and I just gave you at least the decency of not fucking calling you out. And then you get so hyped up. You're like, oh, man, we did it. Like, I got one dub link. So now it's back to the fucking same old bullshit. Anyway. Why are all these trains exploding now? I'm continuing to get rid of costly and unnecessary regulations. Much work left to do, but effect will be great. Business and jobs will grow. Trump rolls back train braking rule meant to keep oil tankers from exploding near communities. An Obama rule to require new brakes to reduce the risk of oil train derailments causing explosions and spilling gas was reversed by Trump. It's like a meme. It's almost like a joke to just like flex this shit. Did he actually post this? Did he post a Fortune article with that take? No, right? No, he didn't post the Fortune article. The Fortune article gives more clarity to what he's talking about, I assume. But he definitely, I'm sure he tweeted this. He flexed regularly about how he was deregulating every sector. Anyway. Oh, here. Let's hear what Sherrod Brown had to say.
I also want to talk about what the company says it's going to do for the residents. They are offering residents $1,000 checks after this disaster, as well as reimbursing some expenses.
Damn,
like
Sherrod does not look
hotels
good.
and food. But as we've been talking about,
I gotta
this
pee,
is
I'll
a
be back.
multi-billion-dollar. Do you think Norfolk Southern is doing enough? And if not, what do you want to see from them?
Well, they've made promises to me. I've spoken to their executives. They've made promises to the community. The first thing I say is if they write a check to an East Palestine or Unity Township resident or people even a little farther away, never sign away your legal rights. You can accept the check, but don't sign anything that would sign away your legal rights. That's what companies like this do. They have made promises. My job, and I talked to a Republican Congressman, Bill Johnson, I was there with him. We are working together on this to make sure that Norfolk Southern lives up to everything it needs to do. It's way more than a $1,000 check per person. It's the fire station is 20 feet from a rail line. What would have happened if that train passed that fire station, if it had blown up then, derailed then, the whole fire station would have been enveloped with by fire and by chemicals and all that. So in residents, just the time away from their homes, the hotel bills, all those things. But Norfolk Southern has made commitments. We're going to make sure they live up to those commitments.
What can you be specific so we can get it on the record here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the commitments they've told me is essentially making everybody whole. And that is all the cleanup, all the help for residents. It's going to be, I don't know, billions like you suggested. It's going to be tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in that community of 4,500 people, and then the township, Unity Township, a little larger. But though whatever they need, everything that's happened here, all the cleanup, all the drilling, all the testing, all the hotel stays, all of that is on Norfolk Southern. They caused it. There's no question they caused it with this derailment because, again, they underinvested in their employees by laying. My understanding, there are only 3 full-time people on that 50, I might have been more than 50 car train that went through town because they've laid off so many people. And I mean, that's why I'm angry when I look at these companies lay people off. They never look out
Tell
for
them,
their workers.
Sherrod.
They never look out for their communities. They
Talk to
look
them.
out for stock buybacks and dividends. Something's wrong with the corporate America, and something's wrong with Congress and administration.
I thought Sherrod was black. No, he's not. Also, it's you're supposed to say Sherrod, but for the longest time, I thought you said his name as Sherrod as well. Because, like, how the fuck am I supposed to know it's Sherrod? You know what I mean?
Listening too much to corporate lobbyists.
Okay, so
And
let's talk
that's
about
gotta
that.
change. I mean, that's the fight I make.
We'll see. We'll see how.
Microsoft has added new.
We'll see what happens. Like to fucking his reelection. Let's be real. Like, it seems as though the Democrats have truly left behind the people in Ohio. They're like you know how they. I do feel like they just kind of have given up on Ohio. They're like, yeah, you guys voted for Trump. You're never gonna vote for us ever again. Fuck it. Like, we're just not gonna do anything. Sherrod Brown is a Ohio institution. I mean, he is unapologetically pro-labor. I mean, he's also still like a Democrat. So obviously there's plenty of fucking shit that he does that I don't like. Like when he was going to run for president and his idea was to lower Medicare to 55. That was it. Medicare eligibility being lowered to 55 was his main goal. It's like, come on, really, dude? Thank you. Thank you for the pro-labor take. Anyway, but I do like that they're talking about billions being billions to shareholders. Norfolk Southern announced a new 10 billion share repurchase plan. Its latest annual financial report, filed just hours before the derailment this month, shows that it still had 7.5 billion available to buy additional shares under the repurchase plan as of December 31st. The company also returned an additional 1.2 billion to shareholders in the form of dividend payments in 2022 and 1 billion in 2021, bringing the total payments to shareholders to 4.6 billion last year and 4.1 billion in 2021. The shareholders did much better than the company's 19,000 employees. Total employee compensation came to 2.6 billion, up from 2.4 billion in 2021. That is crazy. This is perfect. There you go. Like, there is no better representation of like profits over people than this. Motherfuckers who will never touch a train track getting compensated more than the dudes who are actually generating the fucking value. Now, people will say, Hasan, you're a fucking idiot. That's not how shares work. There are more shareholders than there are actual wage laborers in the company. And I understand. But as a whole, it still demonstrates that it demonstrates what they care about more. Okay? Come on now. All right, let's talk about Alan Fisher now. Friend of the show, Alan is a gigantic train nerd, and I think he's going to do a good job describing exactly what happened.
Give it up for today's fighters in the red corner, weighing in at 4,700 population in an underdog Rust Belt town from Ohio. It's East Palestine. And in the blue corner, weighing in at 1 million pounds of vinyl chloride, fighting and dropping cars consistently on the ground on Horseshoe Curve, it's Norfolk Southern. And to officiate today's match, from the Department of Transportation, it's Pete Buttigieg.
In an egregious violation of
Hooking up the country, helping business run. Helping this big...
Jokes aside, this disaster does suck for those who are affected, both with being relocated, with possible contamination, and with the water supply. But everyone has been extremely lucky that there haven't been any deaths or major injuries from this accident. There's one thing that's certain about this incident is that there has been a stupid amount of news coverage, and anyone who...
The worst part is people at East Palestine still have to pay $5 a month to avoid the top of the hour ad break on this fucking broadcast. You know what I mean? But at least they got $5 from Norfolk Southern, so they can use it that way. But regardless, at the top of the hour, there's still a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, baby. For $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime or by getting gifted a sub. You know it. Here's the 3-minute ad break now.
Who says it's a cover-up is a bit goofy at this point. The reason why it wasn't big news in the first place was because derailments usually do not warrant a lot of news coverage. They happen more than most people think, and they're usually pretty mundane and boring for the average 24-hour cable news viewer. I just think that they weren't expecting this one to really blow up as much as it
He's right about this.
did, so coverage was slow at first. Since it did make it into the major news cycle, there's a lot of interesting and bad coverage from journalists that never talk about trains that suddenly now have to talk about trains. And for people like me who talk about trains...
I mean, I gave you Alan's perspective ahead of time. I told you because he was like tweeting about it a lot. He likes trains a little too much. Obviously, he's going to be very fucking nerdy about it. One thing to keep in mind is like, you know, train derailments in comparison to like where they were is still a lot better. When you think about 1,000 train derailments a year, especially that factors like, you know, silly ones like the train just got off the track a little bit, you know what I mean? All of those are still a part of the train derailment number. And even with everything else, like 1,000 is actually fairly, like incredibly small in comparison to where it used to be. Still terrible in comparison to other countries, obviously. But just, you know, keep things in perspective. America, you know, multiple decades ago was way, way, way worse. Alan praised the USSR for its railroad successes compared to America at the time, so yes, he's based. No, I know. He just loves trains too much.
Trains a lot. It's been a painful process to read through these articles and takes about what happened. So for clarification, let's take a quick breakdown of what happened with this derailment in basically chronological order. On February 2nd, Norfolk Southern Train 32N left the Terminal Railroads Association's Madison Yard just outside of St. Louis. Allegedly, the train crew that departed from the yard with 32N reported hearing unusual noises from a part of the train that would later have issues. The train then made its way through Illinois, Indiana, and finally into Ohio, being on the move for roughly 700 miles. At 8 p.m. on February 3rd, the train was making its way through Salem, Ohio, 20 miles west of East Palestine, Ohio. Here, flames were spotted coming from one of the axles of one of the cars.
And the video on your screen now shows that the train appeared to be on fire. This is interesting. 20 miles before it reached the site where it actually went off the tracks, derailed. Now, the footage on your screen is captured by a security camera at an equipment plant in Salem, Ohio.
At 8:54 p.m., the failing axle finally gave out and caused the train to derail in East Palestine. From this point, there's a lot of politics, mismanagement, and generally bad communication on all fronts, but I'm not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the train. So was there any way to prevent this? Yes, actually. One of the tools that US railroads use to make engineers aware that something is wrong with their trains are devices called defect detectors.
Detectors, you have all sorts of types of detectors. You got dragging equipment detectors, detectors for hot bearings. You have line side detectors that do non-safety stuff like telling where the car is. But the most common ones are hot boxes, detectors, and dragging equipment detectors. And lines like this Norfolk Southern line, they're about every 20, 30 miles, depends how many curves. The more intense the layout of the track is, the more hot box detectors you're going to have.
That's my friend Brian. They go by they, them, and they used to work for a Class 1 railroad in field management for maintenance away. I'll be
Brian's in the chat right now. They tweeted, I mean, not tweeted, they wrote in the chat earlier.
Referring to them and 2 other friends throughout the rest of this video for when I need someone with a little extra experience or knowledge in these subjects to be referenced to. Anyway, defect detectors are a critical piece of infrastructure for any modern railroad. Like Brian said, these detectors can pick up on hot boxes or whenever an axle or bearing is getting too hot. Hot boxes aren't just for that Corolla sitting in a dorm parking lot. The name originally comes from railroads from when old journal bearings were still in use. Journals used to overheat commonly, and the box where the journals sat in oil would catch on fire or smoke. Eventually, journals were replaced with roller bearings, which were not only more
People say Hasanabi heads are jobless. Here you have a Hasanabi head.
efficient but also more reliable. Roller bearings rarely fail or catch on fire nowadays, but it still will happen if they are not maintained or inspected. It's very confusing how the axle on this Norfolk Southern train got to the point of failure. Defect detectors are scattered all throughout the network. Remember that video of the train car on fire going through Salem, Ohio? Well, there's
it was supposed to ping multiple times over. So most likely the real issue here is that they basically were like, yeah, fuck off. No, keep it going. Don't stop. Because it takes a lot to stop a train and fix it. So they were just like, yeah, just go through. It doesn't matter. Like, especially from what I understand, long trains with a fuckload of cars, like 50 cars, when they have to stop at a train stop, they are even more difficult to maintain. Even more difficult to maintain because, like, there is bro, a long train, like, is 300 cars. Okay, what are you, working for fucking Norfolk Southern? Why are you saying this? That's what they said. They literally said, bro, it used to be double the size, you fucking dummy. Anyway, 50 isn't long. Got it. Okay, everyone who's a train engineer is yelling at me. Long trains are difficult to fucking process through. They hold up the entire railroad, and of course they hurt profits. So sometimes they just fucking tell you to ignore the signs, ignore the warnings.
actually a defect detector.
And yes, they require more workers.
In Salem. So the alarms should have been going off on the radio calling out to the engineers that there's an issue. I don't know why or understand why 32N didn't stop, because it's proper practice to come to a stop when a detector is tripped. But okay, so if the detectors couldn't have been relied on in this situation, could the brakes have stopped the train from derailing? And what if we upgraded them to a newer system? So if we're going to talk about brakes, I first have to teach you all how train air brakes even work.
I love the voice Alan takes here. Like, he's like, oh man, here we go again. It sucks that I have to do this. When it's like, bitch, we know you're excited to talk about this. Like, he sounds annoyed, but he's not annoyed. This is like extremely his shit. He's like, oh, dude, it's so sick that I get to teach people how braking systems work on fucking trains. You know what I mean?
Air brakes on trains work with a pretty simple concept. Compressed air lines on the train are one single system, so when the pressure drops at the locomotive, the pressure will drop throughout the train, causing the brakes to be applied. When there's a drop in air pressure below the normal, the brakes will start to apply. The signal that applies the brakes is literally the drop in air pressure going from car to car. The signal travels as fast as the speed of sound as the pressure drops from car to car, so even if it isn't instantaneous, it only takes a dozen seconds for all brakes to be applied on a 2-mile-long train. Now, what if we wanted to speed up this brake application? In the news,
For the record, I know Alan got mad at David Sirota for constantly talking about the brake deregulation from the Trump era, or everyone else that's been using that as well. I don't give a fuck, because deregulation is still deregulation. Deregulation and lack of adequate spending on infrastructure is in the same exact vein. It's also the exact same as cost-cutting measures, such as like reducing the number of people working on maintenance. It's also the exact same cost-cutting measure or profit-driving measure, such as the precise systems that they have now, where they're lowering the amount of time that they had for maintenance checks. All of that is exactly the same. Like, they're all the same attitude.
we've been hearing a lot about electro-pneumatic controlled brakes, or ECP brakes. ECP brakes would essentially equip every single car with a computer that would open and close the brakes based on a signal from the engineer. This would allow for the brakes to be applied instantaneously. There are a lot of issues with applying ECP brakes to every car in the country, but I'll talk about that later. One of the current solutions for speeding up brake applications on trains is to place another locomotive.
I think he thinks ECP brakes would make trains less safe overall. I think Alan thinks that. Maybe he doesn't. Because then they'll make the trains even larger. Then they'll add even more carts, just because then they can say, well, we have the ECP brakes, so we can make it even less safe overall, in a way that like other parts of the infrastructure will not be able to hold on to. David Sirota, however, yeah, he thinks they wouldn't make a difference in this situation either. Yeah. Also, on top of that, David Sirota recognizes ECP brakes and why they were at the very least like dropped as a ECP brakes were promoted originally as a cost-cutting measure from these companies to say like, look, we have new brakes. Yes, it'll make them less safe because it'll mean you can go coast to coast without an inspection based on the original DOT rule. Yeah, so they were advocating for this originally as a cost-cutting measure for them, like internally, from what I understand, where they were saying like, look, we have these new brakes. When we put these on, there's going to be less regulation necessary for it. We can fucking maybe even, I assume, put more weight on the trains, shit like that. It'll be more safe because no company ever actually makes technological innovations specifically for the sake of making technological innovations or making things more safe. They do it so that they can make more profit, right? So they can drive up profit. So that's precisely what they were advocating for. And then the government was like, oh yeah, that seems great. The ECP brakes seem great. We should make sure that you guys you have to put it into all of the trains that are carrying fuel. Like anything that is flammable or explosive, like should have ECP brakes now. And they were like, whoa, hold the fuck on. We don't want that actually. Now you're forcing us to put this fucking thing on everything? No shot. And that's the easiest way to describe the saga between Norfolk Southern and other train companies and the lobbyists and the government regulation surrounding it. and why they deregulated it after they said you should put it onto every single train. Now, in this circumstance, it doesn't. Please stop euphemizing a chemical disaster by calling it derailment. The hyper-specific pedantic Andes are in the chat. We got it, man. You got it. Now you're forcing us thing? No, well, the now you're forcing us means that, like, if they were asking for that, that means that they're going to have to spend a lot of money on all of their fucking trains, even ones that they didn't intend on putting ECP brakes on. So that's why they didn't want to do it. That's why they were advocating against it.
Somewhere in the train consist or at the rear. This remote-controlled locomotive controls air pressure the same way that the lead locomotive does, essentially doubling the speed of the brake application by being another air control point in the train. Multiple people either working in the industry or part of regulatory agencies all agree that the Norfolk Southern train would have still caused a major incident regardless of whether it had normal brakes or ECP brakes. Here's Jennifer Homendi, an NTSB chair member, responding to questions about brakes and the derailment. Her main point is that if the suggested rules for ECP were even in effect, this train wouldn't even have been affected by the mandate for this consist. Even then, once you derail a car, no matter the braking system you have, you're going to have an issue. So here's my friend Alex, a 5-year engineer on a Western Class 1 railroad, and his opinions on the subject.
And what happened with the Palestine derailment when they say the train went into emergency, I can't say this without having been there myself, of course, but from what I've seen of the bearing on fire and just the accident, I'm betting that the bearing melted off the axle point, the car went on the ground, and as soon as that hose breaks off from the rest of it, it will put the whole train into emergency. Where it broke, we'll send it both directions for emergency braking. However long that may have taken, I can't remember how much or how long 32 Nacho was, but I believe it was somewhere around 8,800 feet, according to a friend who had it. So that would have taken maybe 3 to 4 seconds going each way to reach another train. Not long. ECP wouldn't have done anything within that given time frame to do it, especially if the car is on fire.
So if brakes aren't the thing to go after, then what should we be advocating for so something like this doesn't happen again? But before we go on to policy, let's close out this section with some words from my friend Justin Rosniak.
I sort of feel like we're going through this rigmarole again, where it's like, well, we could do basic maintenance and slight upgrades to existing systems, but instead, we're going to go way ahead and say, use this new thing that no one's ever used before.
So I don't want to make this section too long because policy is always a bit difficult to listen to. But sometimes when people are talking about Pete Buttigieg online and how he can't really do much, they're sort of right. You see, under the DOT, there is an agency called the Federal Railroad Administration. And unlike the airplane version, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, the FRA is very underfunded and doesn't have as much power over the industry that it oversees as the FAA does over its industry. There are 2 reasons for this, and one is easier to fix than the other. The first is that the FAA controls a lot of publicly owned airports and can easily deny companies the right to use those airports, where the FRA has to deal with private companies and private infrastructure mainly. And
it's literally because it's longer. It's been around for longer in our dog shit fucking country, and therefore they have more time to have eviscerated any kind of nationalization efforts. That's it. And the more private the ownership is, the less the amount of hands that hold it. That's it. It's really fucked up, but it is precisely the reason. I mean, railroads historically, and even the building of railroads historically has been fraught with monopolists and you know, the awful fucking capitalist barons. You already know that. The main issue, and this is like Alan is absolutely correct, and I'm sure he'll mention this now, is that it's not nationalized. The government has limited regulatory power because, you know, they don't even want to do the subsidy part of the regulation. They don't even want to do the fucking bully pulpit part of at least like advocating for certain things and wagging the fucking finger. But when all else is considered here, you still have, you don't have the actual power to, you know, stop railroads completely. Stop these 4 fucking railroad companies from completely dominating. What are you talking about? Do you think companies want their trains to be blown? Government involvement only makes things worse. There is not a single place in this entire fucking planet where railroads have actually gotten better as a consequence of privatization. Railroads, just like airports, rely on heavy public spending. They rely on infrastructure spending. They rely on your tax dollars to even exist. They also provide an incredibly important life-saving piece of our logistics. It needs to be regulated. Yeah, let's not fucking fund them then. Dude, you are not making good points. You are not making good points, okay? You are not making good points. Let's not fucking fund them then is an idiotic measure. I just gave you an example of public ownership being better. Even the American Enterprise Institute's own study that was trying to show that Amway is dog shit in comparison to other countries actually still showed nationalized railroads and publicly owned railroads as infinitely better than the American ones. Okay? Or I say Amway, fuck Amtrak. Fuck you. Shut up. God damn it. Why? Why do they sound so similar? I'm fucking ESL. Suck my dick. Shut up. Yeah, sure, let's heavily regulate them to the point they will ask for more money so you can bitch about them. I want railroad executives to be at gunpoint, put in jail. Okay? I want you to also at gunpoint go to jail for being an annoying little fucking libertarian dipshit who doesn't understand a single fucking thing about the issues that he's talking about and is just trying to fucking do Reddit Lord, debate Lord shit. Okay? I want railroad executives, I want railroads to be nationalized, okay? That's what I want. That's what I think is the right thing to do here. Okay? And I want you to go to jail for being fucking annoying. That's what I want. It's not about regulating them. It's about nationalizing them, okay? Even regulation falls short in a lot of instances. There are still things that even our current government could do, okay? Cutting off subsidies, saying that you're going to tax this industry out of the fucking ass. Okay? Yeah, you want to spend more money to buy them out? No, I'm saying use guns, okay? We're the government in this situation. Just use guns. You don't need money to buy out a railroad. You could just use guns, I think. That's what I'm saying. Just take it. It is on your soil, okay? It relies on you spending money on the infrastructure. It could not exist without any of that shit. I don't want to spend more money on it. I don't want to spend more money to buy them out. I want to use guns. I want ownership at gunpoint and then collective ownership ultimately because, you know, that's what it means to nationalize it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Which guns? Ones that we should take from the people? Okay, you're moving on to a completely different subject matter. And you're also a fucking idiot. I don't know why I can't ban this fucking dumbass. No, man. Oh, they're already banned in the channel. No, I meant like the guns that the government has. Which guns? The ones you want to take away from the people? Dude, no one is coming for your fucking Winchester, okay? No one's coming for your Glock. And when the tyrannical government knocks down your fucking door with the 80,000 IRS agents that are going to, at gunpoint, forcibly make you into a trans bimbo woman, okay? They're going to bimbify you. You're going to not be able to do anything with your little fucking pea shooter, okay? And we're coming for you. We're coming for you, motherfucker. That's right. We're coming to your house. We're knocking down your fucking door. And your little fucking granddaddy's Winchester is not going to do shit, okay? Government has better guns than you. Mandatory forced feminization is coming to you, okay? With the 80,000 IRS agents that Joe Brandon recently hired.
And so it's harder to oversee all of that. What we should take away from this is that the FRA has a lot less oversight over the industry because it's private. And then the other thing the FRA can do is we can just give it more money, because part of the problem with the FRA is that they don't have enough money to hire enough inspectors to actually go out and check all of our infrastructure regularly, and all the cars and rolling stock and all that too, of course. Next thing to fix is labor. The first thing you should do is you should make it a law that you should have two-man crews. Two-man crews is not only safe, but has subverted some disasters that were going to be worse than the Norfolk Southern derailment. The BNSF Castleton derailment was going to be insanely worse if it wasn't for two-man crews. Part of the train was broken apart after it caught on fire after derailing and taken away from the rest of the train so that the other...
I think another part of this is also that, like, the airlines, or at least people that work on airlines, have stronger unions maybe than the railroad union, I feel like. I might be wrong about this, but that's one... That's like the last remaining fucking point of defense against this kind of ridiculous... That's the last remaining point of defense against this kind of ridiculous, like, profit-seeking attitude. Especially because they're trying to do this for airplanes, too. Like, they're currently... Remember, we talked about this. Yeah, Reagan gutted the unions, but the remaining unions are still stronger, I think. And what I mean by that is... as it stands currently, American Airlines are trying to do the exact same thing that they're talking about with one pilot planes. They don't want to have two pilots anymore as a cost-cutting measure, which is an insane thing to advocate for. But our unions will have been pushing back on it aggressively.
Ethanol cars would not catch on fire. There are other obvious labor policies that you can enact, like forcing the railroads to actually hire enough people to do inspections and keep good schedules instead of forcing people to work way overtime or way too many days in a row. Other than labor, another piece of legislation that's probably needed is a standardization of defect detectors. Defect detectors do not have standards, and they are actually different for each railroad. They just happen to be similar because companies make them similar when they buy them. And lastly is PSR, or Precision Scheduled Railroading. The problem with PSR is that it makes trains double or triple the length that they used to be, and this compounds a lot of problems that already exist, including the fact that if you have a problematic car, it's hard to dig out of the train if there's an issue with it in the first place. So, if you want some rules and policies to fix the industry, here they are. Here's 5 good ones right here. I do like that public ownership idea. That might come back around, or I have a few other videos that might mention that concept. But I don't know. Norfolk Southern is a pretty terrible railroad, and I'm not saying that Conrail was perfect, but I'm just saying that they never put a train on the ground because of a hot-boxed car.
Just so you know, I won't be mentioning...
I mean, we've covered this already. I've literally watched the video, but here, we can watch it again.
In this video. But I will say that I do really, really like these graphs. These are nice graphs.
the FAA is one of the few remaining regulatory agencies that can actually fuck shit up at will. That's why aviation is still so safe. If you want to see what aviation with poor regulation looks like, check out the accident record from the 70s to the early 90s. So many major disasters.
There is no country in the world with great passenger rail accessibility, pricing, and frequency that has a privatized rail network. All of the
Whoa, wait a minute. What? That's crazy. What do you mean? How? What? I don't understand. What? That's shocking. You mean to tell me that a natural monopoly, a natural monopoly is better served when it's controlled by the government? What? Stop. That's crazy.
The best countries when it comes to intercity regional rail networks are all nationalized, either owned by the government directly or through a government-run public company. France's SNCF, Germany's DB, Switzerland's SBB, Japan's JR, Austria's ABB, and Spain's Renfe are just a few great examples of the many nationalized rail companies and networks. All of these companies own the track.
Everyone that's saying Japan does not understand. Fuck it. Let's do Japan. With one exception. Let's have Japan's level of regulation. Do we currently have Japan's level of regulation? Do we? Also, it doesn't matter because that was still built with public funds. Remember when someone just lied about Germany's train being private in chat? They didn't lie. It's still on the stock market. It's just government owned. That's what they're... And the lie in that situation is that it wasn't for profit. Like, it doesn't run as a for-profit institution. It still doesn't turn profit.
Tracks, infrastructure, and the rolling stock, aka the trains. And then there is the US. 90% of US railroads lines are privately owned. Amtrak owns less than 700 miles of track and runs mainly on track owned by the big four private railroads: CSX, Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific, and BNSF. These companies routinely block Amtrak trains with freight either by accident or on purpose. But being made late by a freight train is a small problem compared to what these companies do for improving their rail infrastructure. And when I say improving, I mean either doing the bare minimum required for maintenance or actively making their logistics worse by single tracking some of the busiest main lines with the guise of using precision scheduled railroading. It's so obvious that most of these companies are only in it for the short-term profits. So one solution to this is nationalizing the entire rail network. Nationalization isn't something that the US hasn't done before with anything else. The entire US interstate system is nationalized, with the roads being owned by either the federal government or state governments. It's not unusual for the federal government to pass large infrastructure bills supporting these pieces of infrastructure. One said bill was the reason why interstates were built in the first place, the Federal Highway Act of 1956. Nationalization of US railroads isn't a foreign concept either. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the competition from the interstate system along with long-distance trucking became commonplace, causing railroad traffic to decline. In the late 1960s, three large railroads, the Pennsylvania, the New York Central, and the New Haven, merged into one, forming Penn Central. Because of the terrible merger and the freight numbers, Penn Central filed for bankruptcy in 1970, later eventually disappearing in 1976. Many other railroads at the time also simultaneously went bankrupt, like the Reading Railroad, Erie-Lackawanna, Lehigh Valley, Central of New Jersey, and the Lehigh and Hudson. All of these bankruptcies caused a massive void in the US transportation network, but the federal government came to help. And on the sixth day, the Fed said, "Let there be Conrail," and it was good. Conrail emerged as a new quasi-nationalized consolidated rail corporation. Basically, it was nationalization without the total government ownership. Weird, right? Well, to add to Conrail was Amtrak. Amtrak took over all the failed railroads' long-distance passenger lines while Conrail focused on freight. Amtrak was built to fail but miraculously survived and continues to be the U.S.'s inner-city passenger rail carrier today. Conrail was eventually split and bought out by CSX and Norfolk Southern in the late 90s. Both of these companies were built to hopefully become profitable without the government's help, which in a very neoliberal mindset makes sense. But when it comes to transportation, this is not always true, nor is it a good thing. There are benefits to good transportation beyond making a profit, especially when it comes to the efficiency of travel and energy that trains provide. Amtrak and Conrail were never truly nationalized because they were never supposed to be controlled by the government, unlike European railways that I mentioned in the beginning. If Conrail and Amtrak were nationalized in the first place, many of the lines that were dropped for financial reasons in the early days would have never happened. And there would still be many places with a station or line that don't have one now. And without nationalization, it's dumb to think that a private company would ever run a train to smaller groups of population ever again. Also, private corporations running infrastructure that both the public and the government rely on is such a heinous mistake. Alright, we're gonna talk about tax policy now. Hang in there. Okay, now stay with me. I know that tax policy can be quite the killer to listen to, so I'll keep it brief. I'm not going to go through all the history of taxation in great detail except for modern day. But know that there was a time when the government practically gave land and tax
Corpus, skip. Skip this part.
havens away to railroads. Eventually, citizens complained. Next, there was a period of time when railroads had high tax rates on them. And then Conrail showed up because all of those businesses failed. And then finally in the 90s, many of the taxes were drawn back to lower percentages. And that brings us to where we currently are in railroad tax policy. So now we must go over how taxes on railroads work. Here is an older tax document from the state of New York. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything newer than this on the internet, mainly because I myself am not a taxable railroad, or at least not yet. So you can see here how each of these states used to tax rail and still do. What it comes down to is how much improvement is done to a line. Well, except for New Jersey, who taxes it per mile. Yeah, I know, we have a weird state. So generally, if a line is 2 tracks, it will get taxed more. Hence why a lot of modern railroads have single-track main lines in the United States. But this is only one side of the problem. The main part of the problem is how inefficient taxation and grants are with railroads. Generally, railroads will pay some sort of tax on their land. This tax will go to both federal and state governments. Money is then eventually redistributed into the railroads through grants and subsidies. These subsidies usually going to Amtrak for passenger operations and grants going back to private operators for infrastructure upgrades and maintenance. This causes the problem of needing extra personnel in between each of these transactions for bookkeeping, causing a loss of money and unnecessary costs. Now, I'm sure you'll probably think, well, let's just stop taxing these companies so that they can use the cash in the first place to directly upgrade their infrastructure. Well, unfortunately, most private railroads in the US aren't in the business of railroading. As I said earlier, they're in the business of making short-term money. So the majority of the money saved in a for-profit company is directly funneled back into shareholders and upper management's hands instead of back into upgrading infrastructure and for better service. So what's the solution to this? Well, you can either strengthen the unions to have some power to own the railroad to prevent shareholders from poaching cash, or the other option is what majority of the countries around the world have chosen, and that is to divert to nationalization. Most of these problems could be fixed through nationalization and widespread investment into railroad infrastructure. I propose bringing Conrail back. Conrail would take over freight again and would maintain all mainline railroad infrastructure in the country, along with improvements to lines like electrification. Private companies could still own and operate their freight on the network too. They would lease out lines and run their services. This is very similar to how European railways do their services, similar to Flixi-Train in Germany. Class 2 and 3 railroads could also still exist privately too.
because Conrail would only operate mainline services, so Class 2 and 3 railroads would still need to exist for freight hubs. Nationalization would use Conrail to turn the current U.S. rail network into basically a copy of the interstate system, where the government owns the rails and infrastructure, but any company can use them if they pay the toll. The main benefit with these improvements through nationalization would be with Amtrak and passenger rail in the United States. Amtrak could truly have control over all the lines and could manage and set up new lines with ease. Amtrak and Conrail could work together to improve infrastructure and build.
Calling it Conrail would be a mistake. I can easily see it be vilified. Why? Conservative rail.
New high-speed rail corridors as well. Commuter railroads like NJ Transit would also benefit. With nationalization, integration of services into a larger network would be a hell of a lot easier. NJ Transit could open new lines that were once owned by private companies easier too, like the CS.
The one thing, Alan is biased towards New Jersey in an unfortunately positive way. The only thing I'll say about NJ Transit is that its colorway is fucking fire. Actually.
SX main line that runs from Manville to Ewing Township. The US truly has a long way to go before even coming close to any of those countries that I stated in the beginning. But I truly think that nationalization is the first huge push in the right direction to get that train moving.
I can't wait for you to go to Japan. You're literally going to bust a nut over the trains. Yeah. Oh, here from David Sirota. New Governor Mike DeWine has deep ties in Norfolk Southern and his lobby firm. He's refused to issue a declaration sending federal aid to Palestine. East Palestine. He's refused to hold NS accountable for earlier derailments, and his GOP lawmakers just killed rail safety rules. So that's something you need to remind yourself of as well. DeWine has spent 3 weeks pretending to give East Palestine residents everything they need, yet has not formally requested federal disaster assistance. This is it's one of those issues where, like, anytime something goes wrong in America, it's like a very expected problem, right? But anytime something goes wrong in America, like, pretty much every single person in a position of power is just the absolute worst person. So sometimes you forget to, like, mention people like Governor Mike DeWine. It's pretty hard. It's pretty awful. Just incredible. Who do you yell at? Joe Biden, who fucking personally claimed he was pro-labor unions and then, like, played a role in shutting down a railroad union strike a month before this derailment happened. Pete Buttigieg, who's supposed to be the transportation secretary, who did not give a shit about this, and when asked about this issue once it finally, like, made the news cycle, said, oh, there's thousands of rail derailments happening every year, who also is, like, a McKinsey consultant and therefore understands the necessity for deregulation, and is going to gain nothing from even showing support to East Palestine, and everything from just shutting the fuck up and hoping that these big railroads inevitably don't spend money on his opposition. Do I get mad at Donald Trump and the entirety of the Republican Party across the board that champions deregulation as, like, a cost-cutting measure for consumers when it's actually killing people, literally, or at least creating new cancer clusters? Do I get mad at every other industry that is already dumping PFAS into people's natural water supply on a regular basis and poisoning people on a regular basis, things that go unnoticed? Do I get mad at, I don't know, do I get mad at Norfolk Southern and the CEO that is, like, very clearly doing and is going to continue doing all of this shit? There are so many people to get mad at that you sometimes forget the little hobbit, Governor Mike DeWine, in the sea of things. Do I get mad at the EPA? Fuck. Do I get mad at the lobbyists? It's great. Zero Stress Tech, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Anyway. I work for a water utility. My focus is groundwater protection. PFAS is such an unspoken issue that's going to destroy some counties' water systems. Oh, yeah. Anyway, while we are on the subject, though, Ohio residents welcome Trump as he visits the site of the toxic train derailment.
Welcomed the visit.
What do you think about President Trump coming to the area? It was exciting to hear.
Bridget Piles lives in Negley, a small town around 4 miles from East Palestine.
I'm afraid of the chemicals coming here and the after effects, and you don't know. You're not going to know until, who knows, months, years.
The NTSB is expected to release its
Okay, here's the thing I want to show you, though.
The White House.
Right. Speaking of the White House, apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration.
I am honestly shocked that they said this. Like, that is insane. Are they stupid? How hard are they riding for Ron DeSantis? Are they like, I've never seen one of the more popular editorial team backed Fox programs genuinely shift blame back to Donald Trump at a time when he's popping off. That's crazy. Tucker Carlson will be having a word with you.
This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking.
He said an Obama-era rule. Casting Obama in a positive light against Donald Trump? What is happening? Stop.
And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
The White House.
Right.
What the fuck? This is like objectively true, yet still shocking to hear from fucking Fox News. You know what I mean? Because they don't usually deal in truths. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck that was about.